Ash flakes drifted through the broken oculus of the Red Keep's ruined hall like winter's first hesitant snow, dimming the blood-orange glow of braziers guttering in warped sconces. Jon Snow stood alone beneath the vaulted ribs of cracked stone, his borrowed black cloak powdered white by soot. Every inhalation tasted of cold marble dust and the faint iron tang of burnt flesh that clung to the air even days after Drogon's wrath. Somewhere distant, a beam collapsed with a muted groan, as if the castle itself were grieving. He waited, motionless, for footfalls that never came. It was past the hour when Tyrion had sworn to meet him, past the hour when Davos would be fretting by the Queensgate stables, but Jon could not bring himself to move. His gloved fingers explored the hilt of Longclaw, feeling the small nicks in the pommel's direwolf snout, each indentation a memory of battle, of duty, of oaths kept even when they hollowed him out. All led him here, to the moment he was meant to decide whether to let justice sharpen his steel or allow love, cruel and intoxicating, to stay his hand. Love. He almost laughed then, a sharp exhalation lost in the echoing space. There had been love in Ygritte's voice when she died cursing him. There was love, fierce as wildfire, in the eyes of the men who bled beneath his blade at Hardhome while he tried to save them. Love patterned the scars on his chest, yet it never asked so monstrous a price as now. The steps behind him were soft, deliberate. He did not need to turn to know the cadence of her tread, yet still his heart hammered when Daenerys emerged from the shadow of a shattered colonnade. Her silver-gold hair, unbraided, spilled untamed over the dark scarlet folds of her riding dress. In the flicker of firelight, her eyes were quicksilver, bright yet unreadable. She looked less a conqueror and more a flame-kissed wraith wandering the remnants of her destiny. Perhaps she too felt the weight of Tyrion's words from earlier, the whispered warnings Jon had carried in his breast like a shard of glass. "Gone," she said, his name a breath, an imploring lament that washed over him like song. A note of suspicion lingered there, tempered by hope. "I've been walking the corridors searching for you. The Unsullied are hungry for orders. Grey Worm fears a mutiny in the ranks if I do not speak to them soon." "Bentirsi." Jon forced himself to meet her gaze. Even now it dazzled him. The conviction, the terrible certainty. When she spoke of breaking wheels, he had seen maidens blinded by falling stones and children charred against city walls. Yet he had seen her cradle a dying girl in Meereen, had watched her tremble with grief on Drogon's back above the frozen lake north of the wall. The mercy in her was real, buried now beneath layers of grief and the intoxicant of victory. But real. He feared no steel, so much as he feared her extinguished hope. "The realm bleeds," he said, voice coarse. "The small folk dig through rubble for their dead. They whisper your name like a storm coming again. Do you hear them?" Her lips parted, surprise rippling across her fine-boned face. "They will learn," she answered quietly. "A new world only sounds frightening until it arrives. When they taste peace, true peace, they will remember. I gave it to them." He heard the echo of Titus Lannister's skull cracking beneath Grey Worm's sword. Smelled the smoke of King's Landing burning, peace bought in flame and ash. Yet he found no falsehood in her tone. In her mind, it was mercy. He stepped toward her. The nearby brazier's glow warmed one half of her face and left the other in umbral chill, a living rebus of the war inside her. He tried to imagine thrusting Longclaw between her ribs, ending this before the new wheel could grind more bones. He tried to imagine living afterward with the ghost of that act. He failed. A long moment yawned between them. He reached out, hand trembling as it brushed the back of hers. Her spine straightened, breath catching. Against his palm her skin felt feverish, vibrant as a beating wing. He thought of Maester Aemon's final counsel. Love is the death of duty. But what if love could also redeem duty, twist it into something new? She whispered, almost inaudible, "I will not be alone when the dawn comes, will I?" "No," he said. The single syllable cost everything, and granted everything in the same breath. "But dawn should not find us here." Confusion shadowed her brow. What do you mean? He leaned close until the scent of smoke in her hair eclipsed the reek of ash around them. I mean leave King's Landing. Tonight. Dot. At first light, the lords will gather, each certain they know how to chain you, or slay you. The North will not kneel, not after this. Tyrion will not stay the lions much longer. We have hours, maybe less, before blades are drawn. Dow. She pulled back, astonishment morphing swiftly into indignation. Flee? After all after the blood sacrificed? Not flee. Live. The words sounded inadequate beside the enormity of what he asked. He groped for language that could bridge the yawning gulf between her dream and the realm's screams. Come north with me, to Skagos, or beyond the wall. Let the realm heal itself. Let history judge both of us if it must, but let children grow without more fires. Bah. Silence expanded, until it threatened to crush them. A distant gull cried beyond the empty windows. Sea wind coiling with the smell of ruin. Daenerys' throat worked. You would have me abandon Drogon? Abandon the unsullied who crossed the world for me, the Dothraki who followed my comet's tail? They swore blood oaths, Jon, and they will follow you again if you come back, he pleaded. But now they are hated in these streets. They will be hunted, poisoned. You saved thousands from bondage, but if you stay, you carve their tombstones with your own hands. Belle. Her eyes glistened, and he realized she was trembling. You would tear me from the only crown ever offered me freely. For what? To hide beneath the snows like a broken wolf licking wounds? To live, he repeated. To live as Daenerys Stormborn, not as the breakage left in the wake of a dragon's roar. She studied him, vision flitting across his scars, reading each etched tale. Slowly, her features softened, though resolve still girded her voice. If I go with you, I give up the throne I was born to reclaim. If you don't, he said, you may gain a throne of skulls and sit upon it alone. The simple brutality of the image hung between them, stark as the direwolf banner he once carried into battle. She closed her eyes, lashes wet. He saw the coil of her breath in chill air. When her lids lifted, a strange quiet had settled upon her. I need Drogon. We'll find him, Jon promised, though he had no certainty the beast still lingered. But first we need horses, provisions, a way out unseen. Davos holds 2 mounts prepared at the Queen's Gate. Arya moves within the shadows. She may guide us to the river and a skiff. We go tonight. Men? The edge of her mouth twitched, less a smile than the birth of one. You have planned this. I planned a choice, he said. The unsullied need not die for it, nor the city. She stepped forward until their foreheads almost touched. If I go with you. Not as queen, not as prisoner, but as Daenerys. He nodded, afraid to speak lest words undo the delicate bridge they had forged. Her hand slid into his. Then lead, Jon Snow. They moved quickly, weaving through half-collapsed corridors, where ghosts of Targaryen kings seemed to watch from mosaic eyes. Jon kept a hand on Longclaw, though the weight of the blade felt lighter than the decisions he had laid before fate. At every turn he expected Grey Worm's stolid gaze, or Tyrion's mournful reproach, but the keep slumbered under the opiate of spent rage. On the terrace overlooking the charred ruins of the training yard, Arya emerged from the dark like a shadow given breath. She wore no house colors, only scuffed leather and the purposeful quiet of a stalking cat. Her gray eyes moved from Jon's clasped hand to Daenerys' face. Hard as flint yet flickering with questions she did not voice. I saw you enter the hall, Arya murmured. Couldn't be certain which one of you would come out alive. Where's Davos? Jon asked. Waiting with your smugglers' boats. We use the service tunnels beneath the kitchens. The unsullied watch the gates, but no one guards the cesswater drains. She regarded Daenerys a beat longer. I told Tyrion to stay put if he values his tongue. He's torn as paper these days. Nendawand. Daenerys bristled. Tyrion will not be harmed. Depends who reaches him first, Arya replied without apology. Then her voice softened, barely. You'd better hurry. Word is spreading the northern forces marched on the city walls at dawn, Sansa's banners among them. Jon flinched. The last time he'd seen his sister, she had watched dragons circle above Winterfell with wary awe. If Sansa marched south now, it would be with Legion purposes. To protect what family remained, to avenge what could not be protected, to shape a realm out of ruination. He took Daenerys' arm. "We leave. Now." Arya pivoted, boots silent even on broken masonry, and guided them through servants' passages that reeked of mildew and mouse droppings. The queen's crimson hem dragged soot across cold flagstones. More than once she paused to steady herself, unused to fleeing when once she had commanded courtiers by a glance. But each time Jon's hand anchored her. Beyond a rust-eaten sallyport, the moonlit slope fell steep toward the Blackwater Rush, its surface muddied with debris from collapsed wharves. Davos waited near the mouth of a disused drain, two chestnut geldings tacked and restless beside him. "Was beginning to fear you'd lost your nerve," the Onion Knight grunted. Deep furrows lined his brow, but relief softened their edges when he beheld Jon, alive and unsplattered with blood. His gaze slid to Daenerys, lingering on the torn shoulder seam powdered gray. "Your Grace," he said, respectful though weary. "There'll be time for courtesies later," Jon said. He clasped Davos' forearm in gratitude. Arya climbed the saddle of the second horse. "I take her through the Narrows," she said, chin jerking eastward toward the maze of alleys between the burnt Ragman's Row and the river. "Less patrols and I know every rooftop." Jon hesitated. "I won't leave either of you. I can lead a queen through shadows." Arya cut him off, voice as sharp as needle's point. "You find Drogon." Daenerys blinked. "You mean to split us?" "For an hour," Arya asserted. "The Unsullied fear the dragon more than any host. Draw them out. When you return, follow the torches along the north bank. Look for a skiff with the direwolf painted white. We'll be aboard." "Them?" Jon met Daenerys' eyes. Beneath the flickering lamplight, the violet in her irises deepened, like twilight pooling behind clouds. He touched her cheek. "Trust Arya. She can vanish like mist. I learned from the best," Arya muttered, already loosening the reins. "And I'd rather not demonstrate on you." Daenerys swung onto the saddle behind her with surprising ease. Her fingers brushed the knife hilt at Arya's belt briefly, testing the weight, then released. "Bring Drogon," she told Jon. "Bring our future." He nodded, heart lumping in his throat as the horse carried them into darkness. Then he and Davos turned westward, keeping low beneath ruined archways until they reached an open court where moonlight silvered the bones of a toppled bell tower. Grey Worm's patrols passed beyond, silhouettes of spears against the gloom, unaware of the shape that slept coiled amid shattered rooftops beyond the fish market. Drogon lay there, wings folded, tail curled like a black river over the cracked tile. The beast's breath rose in steaming gusts, writhing with ember motes. Jon tasted fear, an old, bracing companion. Yet he strode forward, mindful of every memory the dragon carried of his scent, of the day he'd touched its scales beside Rhaegal. Memory could turn to instinct, though, and instinct devoured hesitation like tinder. He stopped within 20 paces, holding out empty hands. "Drogon," he murmured into the stillness. An eyelid creaked open, red slit revolving toward him. The low rumble in the creature's chest mocked distant thunder. Davos remained a respectful spear-length behind, murmuring prayers under his breath. Jon crouched, palms opened. "She needs you. We all do. But not here, my friend." Drogon's nostrils flared, tasting night air laced with King's Landing smoke. Myth and muscle shifted as the dragon raised its massive head, plates of obsidian dark scales overlapping like forged steel. Jon rose slowly, step by deliberate step, until he reached the sagging awning beneath Drogon's chin. The eye tracked him, but did not narrow. "Fly with me," Jon whispered. He reached out, fingertips grazing the warm, ridged hide. The dragon emitted a deep chuff, exhaling sparks that fluttered away harmlessly. Jon stepped closer, rested his palm fully against the living furnace. Against all fear, a quiet wonder bloomed. This was not dominance but something older. A pact beyond speech. He swung himself onto the broad join where neck met shoulder. Muscles bunching beneath him. Drogon unfurled wings wider than a galleon's mast. Burden-deep cords rattled the broken tiles as the beast crouched. Jon braced behind the skull crest, fingers digging into spine smoothed by soot. He looked once at Davos, who gave a nod half terrified, half exultant. "Meet us on the bank," Jon called. Davos pointed eastward and fled into shadows. With a shriek that shivered every glass shard in the fish market's wreckage, Drogon launched. The sheer upward thrust flattened Jon to the scales. The battered city dropped away, its alleys threading outward like veins from a dark heart. Cold night whipped his hair, and he tasted salt from the bay. Stars swung overhead, dizzying. He pressed low, remembering lessons half learned atop Rhaegal's back at Winterfell. Trust the motion, become part of it. Below, the riverside district flared with torch lines, unsullied patrols fanning out. He glimpsed crossbows, but no bolts dared yet. Drogon coursed over Blackwater Bay, banking north. Jon guided lightly, tugging at neck spines, murmuring Daenerys' name. The dragon responded, as though scenting her across the winds. They spiraled downriver, wings beating silence until the torchlit lines dwindled and mangrove thickets swallowed noise. On a narrow mudflat flanked by half-sunken willows, Arya's promised skiff waited, the stark direwolf white on its hull. 2 lanterns glimmered there. One figure, small, slender, stood near the bow. Hair silver in starlight, Drogon landed in a sand-spraying crouch. Jon slid down, heart still thrumming to dragon wing rhythm. Daenerys approached, eyes reflecting lantern glow, and without a word, she touched Drogon's cheek, pressing her brow to warm scales. The dragon's rumble turned low in content, vibrating the air like distant organ chords. Arya appeared from the stern, dagger still unsheathed, scanning the tree line. The river's clear for now. Unsullied, hold the crossings upriver. We steer seawards, then hug the Blackwater rush past the mouth. Davos has sailors waiting near the forts beyond the reach. He claims the smuggler's moon will blind pursuers. Meaning? Daenerys watched Arya with a flicker of awe. You guide us as though ghosts were your kin. Ghosts taught me, Arya said, sheathing steel. Jon helped Daenerys into the boat, Drogon sliding into the shallows, wings folded, tail curling around them like a living seawall. The hull creaked beneath the dragon's weight, but held. Arya loosed rope, and the current took them. For the first span of river, they spoke little. Jon pulled oar, Arya steered, and Daenerys sat wrapped in his cloak, face lifted to night breezes that smelt of salt and pine rather than ash. Drogon followed, swimming smooth as a leviathan, only the ridge of his spine breaking water, eyes reflecting torch fire from distant garrisons like twin garnets. More than once Jon glimpsed flickers of movement on the dark banks, perhaps wolves, perhaps watchers, but none approached. The further they slipped from the city, the brighter the stars seemed. When at last torches of King's Landing dwindled to sparks on the horizon, Daenerys let out a breath so tremulous Jon felt his chest echo it. Some part of me expected the sky to crack, she confessed, voice a hush so soft it barely disturbed the night. Jon rested an oar, water dripping diamonds. The gods have watched us fail and triumph before. They will watch us learn. She turned, studying him in rare stillness. Is that what this is? Learning? A beginning, he said. Arya murmured from the stern. Beginnings can be bloodier than endings. Daenerys' gaze shifted to the young wolf, and something like empathy warmed her features. You've seen too many of both. More than I care to count, Arya answered. Silence settled again, not heavy this time but expectant. The river hissed past the hull. Frogs croaked among reeds. Drogon occasionally snorted warily, the stench of distant cook fires irritating his nostrils. Yet he remained close, protective. Hours slipped away. By the time a pale wrist of dawn glimmered low in the east, they had reached a broad estuary where marsh grasses whispered against the flood tide. Davos' larger sloop bobbed at anchor beyond, its mainsail furled. Crew silhouettes clustered on deck. Jon felt exhaustion draw lead through muscles, but his mind remained sharp, counting risks yet to come. Pursuit by unsullied outriders, Dorne's galleys, even ironborn reavers hungry for weakened prey. Yet for the first time since he had climbed to the knife's edge of fate within the Red Keep, he believed the coming trials could be weathered. Daenerys rose, soft boots silent on the boards, cloak swirling. Jon thought she might question him again, ask what future awaited a queen without a throne, a dragon mother without cities to govern. Instead, she clasped his sleeve and drew him beside her at the prow. The faintest pink tongue of dawn brushed clouds over far mountains. Chill wind teased hair into her eyes, and she laughed, a sound raw, almost startled. "The world is larger than my crown," she said, marveling. "I feel it now." Jon closed a hand around hers. "I felt it once beyond the wall. An old friend reminded me nothing we build lasts, but what we defend in one another can." "Bend shall." Her fingers squeezed his. "Then let us defend each other." Behind them, Arya secured the last line, dagger between teeth. "Talk less," she advised dryly. "Row more." Jon laughed, the sound strange in his throat, an echo of the boy who once dreamed of adventure from the battlements of Winterfell. He took the oar again, muscles burning, heart lightening. Drogon loosed a low rumble of approval, wings beating water in slow cadence. The sloop ahead unfurled its sail, canvas catching the newborn wind. Future horizons beckoned, uncharted seas, unknown lands, dangers unimagined, and wonders unspoiled by conquest. And as the sun's first spear of gold split the horizon, Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen crossed from the world that had demanded their deaths into one that whispered possibility. Every stroke of the oar, another step into the long, uncertain dawn. Kay. The sloop's black sail rippled as dawn's quiet wind stiffened, carrying the faint brine of the narrow sea, and the distant, sour scent of the blackened city they had left behind. Davos stood at the tiller with a stevedore's ease, guiding the shallow-keeled craft out of the estuary's mouth. The inlet narrowed between low dunes tufted with marram grass. Gulls wheel called overhead, but otherwise the waterway lay abandoned, as though every living soul had withdrawn from the echoes of dragonfire. Jon sat on the starboard thwart, sweat cooling on his brow despite the morning chill, while Arya kept to the bow where the planks creaked under the rhythmic dip of her oar. Daenerys, half shrouded in Jon's cloak, watched Drogon pace behind them in the channel. The dragon's wings brushed the reeds with each slow bound. Water hissed over his scales like poured sand. Every now and then he would lift his head and taste the sky, nostrils flaring for threats unseen. The crew Davos had promised numbered only 3. Ren, a wiry Northman with hair the color of old rope. Haxby, a grizzled summer islander whose crab-hook scars mapped his forearms. And Gwenna, a sun-browned woman of the sisters with mistrusting eyes, the hue of peat. They moved about the deck with quiet deliberation, stowing line and trimming yard. But each stole bemused glances toward the queen, whose very name only hours earlier had rung from a million terrified throats. None spoke it aloud. The silence seemed brittle, a glass barrier separating fugitives from their unlikely protectors. Jon broke that silence first. "Storms gather to the south," he said, nodding toward a bruised dark wall of cloud forming over the bay. "We should make cover along the coast before midday." Davos worked the tiller an inch, testing the wind. "There's a cove I used to favor when the Crown's levies pinched my cargo," he replied. "High cliffs, narrow mouth. Easy to miss unless one looks straight at it. With luck we'll reach it before the weather gives us a slap." Arya spared a glance aft. "Pursuit?" "None yet," Davos answered, though his tone carried little relief. "But masts move fast on rumor. By nightfall every sail on the gullet will know the queen vanished." "Makes little difference," muttered Gwenna as she coiled halyard. "A dragon is harder to swallow than a rumor." Drogon, As if in answer, loosed a reverberant croon. Spray rattled down his flanks. Daenerys rose, crossing to the gunwale. Her hand hovered over the water, fingers twitching in unconscious cadence with the dragon's breath. "He senses unrest," she murmured. Jon joined her. "In him or in you?" She considered that, lashes veiling the purple of her eyes. "Both." A gust lifted her hair in argent ribbons. "When I burned the Khals, when I sacked Astapor, every step felt inevitable. This path," she looked back toward the vanishing city. "This path is blind. Then we'll light it as we go," Jon said. Though the words tasted brittle, hope hammered thin, but still metal. Grey Worm stood upon the balcony of the Tower of the Hand, gaze fixed on the sweep of muddy river curling beneath char-stained ramparts. The glimmer of morning sun across armor-scabbed masonry did nothing to warm him. Behind, in the sparse chamber, Tyrion Lannister paced short, frenetic lines, chains at his wrists clinking. Counselors shouted on the floors below. Lords of the Reach, the Vale, the Westerlands, and the haggard, sour-faced men Sansa Stark had brought from the north. All demanded answers to the same question. "Where is the Queen?" "She must return and speak," Tyrion urged. "A monarch absent breeds revolt." "No," Grey Worm replied without turning. "Until traitors answer, unsullied hold city." "Traitors?" Tyrion echoed, one brow quivering. "You mean Jon Snow?" Grey Worm's silence confirmed. Tyrion's pacing ceased. "If you strike at him, you strike at the north, at the Vale, at every house still breathing after this slaughter. Enough corpses, Captain. Let the ashes cool." The unsullied commander pivoted, face unmarred except for the fine scar by one eye. "My queen freed me from chains. She gave purpose. I will not let wolves and lions steal her victory." Tyrion's mouth twitched, as though he tasted bile. "Victories are illusory things, my friend. The only trophies worth keeping are living allies. Kill them and you're left with ghosts and rubble." Grey Worm stared, unblinking. Unsullied, no ghosts. When he left the chamber, Tyrion sagged into a chair too tall for him, the manacled chain rattling. His thoughts turned northward, tracing the unseen flight of the men. And Dragon, who might yet pull what remained of Westeros into another bloody whirl. He felt the weight of an old debt, unpaid. The sloop heeled gently as Davos angled her into the cove by mid-morning. Limestone bluffs rose on either side, honeycombed by swallow nests and wave-sculpted hollows. Drogon banked overhead, one great wingtip nearly brushing the cliff face, before he folded into a perch of stone higher up the escarpment. A rain-washed calm settled over the inlet. The fugitives set about making camp beneath a rock overhang. A small fire pit shielded from sea spray. Bedrolls unrolled across shingle. Salted pork strips hung to smoke. Arya scaled a goat trail toward the cliff's ridge, disappearing like a whisper. Gwenna and Haxby busied themselves with pitchpot repairs on the sail seams. Jon knelt at the fire, coaxing flame from damp driftwood. Beside him Daenerys crouched, expression intent, palms extended. The flicker caught in her eyes, a lesser echo of dragonfire, and he wondered whether all flames felt kin to her. Obeying some silent tongue, she alone spoke. She noticed his gaze and offered a faint smile. Small as a candle, but no less real. "You once told me dragons are fire-made flesh," he said. "Do you still feel the same after all the burning?" Her smile withdrew into thought. "Fire reveals," she answered finally. "The night at Hardhome, you saw truth in blue flames. Here." She looked past him to the escarpment, where Drogon crouched in silhouette against drifting cloud. "Here I must decide whether truth is worth the pain it brings. You needn't decide alone." She considered him, then placed her hand over his resting on the tinder. "Nor you." The simple pressure of her fingers, once so commanding, now trembled with uncertainty, and perhaps relief. "Tell me of the north, Jon. Tell me of deep snows and silent forests. Paint it so vividly I cannot forget." So he did. He spoke of dusk at Winterfell when the Godswood Pond reflected purple twilight, of White Harbor's fishmongers, bawling prices, while gray gulls quarreled overhead, of how a hearth sounded when pine logs crackled in a hall thick with laughter. His words rose with sparks, painting a world so distant from the salt-stained present that even Davos paused nearby, letting stories waft over him like hearth smoke. Daenerys closed her eyes. Snow she had never touched drifted across her thoughts. "And when winter ends?" she asked. "Spring follows," he said. "If you keep enough seeds alive in the dark." "Then I will learn to plant," she murmured. By late afternoon Arya returned, boots dusty, tunic salt-specked. She dropped to a crouch, chewing a strip of smoked fish. No scouts south or west. A galley bearing the hand sigil of House Hightower hugged the shore a league off but kept course for the gullet. Either they haven't news or they want no quarrel with dragons. Jon nodded. "We'll move at dusk. Follow shore currents south of Driftmark, then veer east into Shipbreaker Bay. If Storm's End remains neutral, we can resupply." "Endawand," Davos grunted. "Neutral is a generous word for the Lord of Storm's End. Gendry Baratheon will bend whichever way helps him hold a castle bigger than his name. So we give him reason," Jon said. "We carry a dragon." Davos chuckled, though worry flickered in his eyes. "Dragon's a two-edged gift, lad. Might win us harbor, might bring every bolt thrower on the walls. We'll go at night." Arya interjected. "Moon's half, clouds thickening. Good cover." Daenerys rose. And Drogon flies above, watching. Her tone bore steel again. Quiet steel, tempered by the breeze, but steel nonetheless. Jon studied her profile. The flame that had threatened to devour kingdoms still glowed, banked now, seeking shape. He prayed the wind did not feed it wrong. The night voyage blurred into hours, measured only by the whisper of hull against swells and the steady creak of line. Clouds buried the stars, and the world narrowed to the dim glow of a single shielded lantern hung beside the mast. Drogon shadowed them high in the overcast, wings drawing ragged holes in scud cloud, unseen yet sensed. A vast heart beating in the heavens. Jon dozed, sitting upright, dreams stitched from clashing memories. Snowfields, desert wastes, a red keep festooned with ash. Each time he jerked awake, Daenerys was there beside the mast, face lifted toward the skies as though listening to a voice he could not hear. At second cockcrow, the sloop passed the menacing rocks called the Merling's Teeth, jagged spires clawed from black water, notorious for wrecking warships in storms. Davos guided by instinct and old tricks, watching where swells split irregularly, indicating submerged stone. Even so, once the keel grated across a shoal, making every throat on board constrict. Jon swore he heard crossbow strings hum somewhere beyond mist. But no quarrels whistled. An hour later, Haxby sounded alarm from the port rail. Lanterns, 3, swinging, glimmered southward. A lean silhouette emerged through haze. A patrol cutter, lateen-rigged, closing quartering the wind. Jon's heart lurched. Davos cursed softly. "Outrun?" Jon asked. "Not with this wind," Davos replied. His scarred fingers whitened on the tiller. "But cloak the lantern and pray." Gwenna snuffed their light. Darkness swallowed deck and faces alike. The cutter's lamps winked closer, their reflections skipping across chop. Moonlight briefly pierced cloud, silvering the main yard of the stranger vessel. Upon its sail, a sigil appeared. A blazing red heart flayed, crowned by flame. Melisandre's old god. Our lore. Jon felt cold despite sweat. "Queen's men," Davos muttered. "They followed Stannis once. Might still hunger for a dragon to stoke their fires." "Them? Them see." The cutter hailed in harsh Valyrian-tinged common. No reply rose from the sloop. Arya slipped forward, notched an arrow silently. Jon drew Longclaw half an inch. The rasp sounded enormous in the hush. Before challenge could repeat, a rushing roar cleft the air. Drogon stooped out of cloud, black wings blocking the moon. His belly scales combed scant yards above the cutter's mast. Wind sheared from his pinions, knocked sailors flat. Their lanterns burst, glass tinkling. A gout of greenish flame, Not full force, but enough. Washed the sea astern of them, lighting steam pillars. Screams rose, frantic, then receded as the dragon climbed again into cover. The patrol slewed, oars flailing, and veered hard starboard, suddenly absorbed by the mist. On the sloop deck, breath returned like a single exhale. Davos allowed a grin. Sometimes a two-edged gift cleaves trouble neatly. Daenerys leaned across the rail, lips parted in wonder, as though she had watched Drogon for the first time. Yet in her eyes flickered not triumph, but responsibility deeper than crown or war. Jon saw it and felt something uncoil inside him. Relief, maybe, or the first fragile seed of trust that the flame she bore could warm rather than destroy. When dawn peeled away the last veil of cloud, the jagged outline of Cape Wrath rose off starboard, and beyond, the surge-battered promontory of Storm's End. A solitary tower jutted like a sword pommel, banners snapping crimson and gold in stiff wind. The stone looked raw beneath the wild sky, unconquered, unburned. They did not sail directly for it. Instead, Davos anchored in a hidden creek northeast of the castle, where thorny scrub and wind-twisted cedar offered screening. Drogon landed upon a scree slope, his bulk scattering gulls. The fugitives ate sparingly. Cheese, hardtack, dried apple, and planned. "Gendry owes you fealty, Jon," Davos said between bites. "Baratheon blood or no, the lad remembers how you raised his name among lords. Fealty may not stretch to harboring the queen he once swore against," Jon countered. Daenerys shook her head. "Whatever oath he offered died the night I burned the city. Trust must be earned anew." Arya chewed thoughtfully. "We go in as travelers seeking audience. Let Drogon remain hidden." "Difficult to hide a dragon," Gwena muttered. Jon studied maps Davos unrolled. Salt-stained parchments cribbled with shoals and depth marks. "We bring minimal company. Davos, Arya, myself. Daenerys stays with the boat." "No," the queen said. "I face the lord of this keep openly. No more shadows." Jon met her stare. "If he tries to seize you, I have burned tyrants for less," she said quietly. Then softer, "But I will offer him choice." Davos tapped the chart. "Fair enough. We row to the outer beach at dusk, climb the goat path, seek audience before he can marshal archers." So the plan forged. The great drum tower of Storm's End loomed overhead like a sea-weathered cliff as the four climbed the switchback trail that evening. Spray flung from breakers far below chilled their cloaks, while gulls shrieked overhead. Arya scouted ahead, her lean form melting into dusk. Davos huffed behind, cursing his knee with each step. Jon walked at Daenerys' shoulder. The queen's face bore the wind unflinching. Salt crystallized in her lashes, giving her eyes a glacial sheen. They reached the Sally Gate, an iron-bound door of oak older than the Conqueror's Landing, and pounded the knocker thrice. After a tense wait, the slot slid aside. A pair of wary eyes studied them. "Travelers from the north seek audience with Lord Baratheon," Davos declared. The eyes flicked to Daenerys' silver hair, then to Jon's sword, then back. A pause stretched. Finally the gate yawned open. They entered a narrow corridor lit by rushed torches, walls beaded with damp. 15 Stormlander men-at-arms awaited, half-moon shields raised, but their posture suggested curiosity more than hostility. A lean knight in rust-trimmed mail waved them forward. "Lord Gendry holds court in the upper hall." As they climbed spiral stairs, Jon noted the banners. The crowned stag new-painted beneath an encircling fiery heart, signifying alliance of Baratheon and Arlor still lingering. Memories of Melisandre's pyres pricked him. He cast Daenerys a sideways glance. She read nothing from those cloth symbols save the color. The upper hall, though modest compared to King's Landing's throne room, felt sturdier. Its barrel vault thick as castle walls. Chandeliers dripping tallow, long benches scarred by countless feasts. Atop the dais, seated in a heavy oaken chair, Gendry Baratheon rose as they entered. He wore a sleeveless jerkin over quilted mail, arms bare. Muscles knotted like anchor rope. A forge burn marred one bicep. When he spoke, His voice carried rough warmth. "Snow," he greeted. "And your grace." He inclined his head to Daenerys, neither subservient nor insolent, merely assessing. Jon stepped forward. "Lord Gendry, we come seeking safe harbor and provisions for a northward journey. Nothing more." Gendry's glance slid past Jon to Davos, old master of smuggling. Then to Arya, whose gray eyes caught his with a flicker of unspoken history. Finally to the Queen. "You ask much," he said, though not unfriendly. "Storm's End keeps its walls closed until storms pass." Daenerys spoke before Jon could. "I once rode storms," she said, "but I did not ride them well enough. Now I walk. I beg only a resting place, while I decide where to plant what seeds remain." Her tone carried strange humility that hushed the hall. Gendry frowned. "Seeds? Hope," she answered simply. A silence stretched. Torches snapped. Behind Gendry, a gaunt priest in red vestments stepped forward. Eyes bright as embers appraised the visitors. The Lord of Light tests each wanderer. The shadow in his flames warns of treachery, Lord. His gaze lingered on Daenerys. Some fires burn the world to save it. Gendry shifted uneasily. "Thoros," he addressed the priest. "The last time your order promised salvation in flame, my predecessor perished chasing false stars." He turned back to Jon. "Tell me this. Is King's Landing truly ashes?" Jon's jaw tightened. "I left the day after the bells. Ash covered the streets thick as snow. The city bleeds yet." Gendry exhaled. "And Sansa Stark marches south. Likely already before the gates," Jon said. Gendry nodded, jaw working. He descended the dais, boots echoing on flagstones, until he stood a sword's length from Daenerys. His eyes, earnest as a smith's protege, searched hers. "You spared Storm's End by the width of a single sunrise," he said. "Why?" Her answer came without hesitation. "Because the dead at my feet taught me mercy too late. I will not butcher another keep to chase a crown that fled my grasp." The priest hissed. But Gendry raised a hand. He studied her a heartbeat longer, then Jon, then Arya, whose cheeks colored at his gaze, quickly masked. At last he spoke. "You may rest beneath my roof," he declared, "but only on bond of peace. Should Unsullied Legion or Lannister host appear, I will defend Storm's End first." "Fair," Jon said. "More than fair," Daenerys added. Gendry clapped Davos on the shoulder. "Serenian. See our guests fed. Arya." He stumbled over her name. "You know the way to the North Tower. I'll have rooms prepared." She gave the faintest nod. As servants led them from the hall, the Red Priest watched, lips moving in silent prayer, eyes flicking to the chandelier's flames as though seeking omen. Shadows writhed on stone walls. Some long, some stunted, dancing to a rhythm older than King's. That night Jon could not sleep. Despite feather mattress and shuttered windows, memories prowled the corridors of his mind. He slipped from his chamber, barefoot on cold stone, and ascended a parapet walk. Sea wind whipped his hair. Clouds scudded away, revealing a three-quarter moon bleeding argent across restless swells. Far below, waves crashed with thunder unceasing. He found Daenerys there already, leaning atop crenellations. Her white hair shimmered ghostly in moonlight. She wore a simple tunic, no finery, no dragon brooch. She did not turn as he approached. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Storm song." She said, voice nearly stolen by wind. "It reminds me of the Dothraki Sea at night. Different language, same loneliness." He stood beside her, fingers brushing hers on stone. Loneliness ends where company begins. A faint smile curved her lips, not fiery but warm. They watched breakers hurl themselves at cliff base. After a time she spoke, low. "Do you think death follows us still, Jon? That the vengeance of those I wronged will crash upon these walls?" He considered. "Death follows everyone, but life keeps pace if we let it. And now, She turned fully now, moonlight painting one side of her face alabaster, the other shadowed. I want to believe. I do. But the screams beneath the bells still echo. How many nights before they fade? Ask me how long the screams north of the wall stayed with me, he said. They never faded. I learned to carry them without dropping my sword. And if I have no sword? Only flame? Then we find a way to wield flame as light instead. She looked skyward. Drogon circled beyond vision. Sensed but invisible. Promise me, if darkness claims me again, you will stand before it. Not with a blade, but with this. She placed a palm against his chest. He covered it with his own. I promise, he said. In that moment no prophecy cast shadow, no throne loomed. Only the hush between waves, and two hearts daring to beat in unison. Storm's End proved haven for 7 days. Supplies were gathered. Smoked venison, casks of barley ale, wool cloaks sturdy enough for northern cold. Gendry lent 2 weathertight longboats and a handful of loyal sailors. Davos plotted a route up the narrow coast, hugging shore as far as Maidenpool, then striking north through the Bight toward White Harbor. Drogon hunted crayfish over tidal flats by dusk, returning sated and calm. Villagers glimpsed him and gaped, but found no charred roofs come morning, and soon awed murmurs replaced fear. Arya spent hours upon the battlements with Gendry, speaking little yet sharing comfortable silence broken only by gull cries. Jon saw her laugh once, rare and bright, like sun through sudden cloud. He made no comment, only treasured the sight. Inside the keep, the Red Priest Thoros bent over coals nightly, lips murmuring to the flames. Once Daenerys ventured into the chapel, seeking understanding. She watched as images swirled in orange glow. Cities in ruin, a dragon above snow dunes, a lone direwolf howling beneath shifting green-blue skies. Thoros spoke cryptic warnings, but she left unmoved. The future would not be handed to her by fire again. She must craft it through choices. On the 8th dawn word arrived. Unsullied outriders had reached the Rainwood crossroads, only 2 days' march south of Storm's End. 20 ships under the banner of the three-headed dragon sailed out of King's Landing harbor. Grey Worm had set pursuit. Decision came swift. They would depart before nightfall. The flotilla of 2 longboats and the sloop slipped from the cove under a sky blotched by mare's-tail clouds. Drogon took to the air, scaling thermals, his silhouette a traveling shadow over forested capes. Storm's End dwindled astern. All banners furled, but for the crowned stag. Gendry watched from the ramparts, a lone figure braced against wind. Arya raised a hand once. He answered in kind, arm a black stroke above stone. They hugged coastline northeast, passing cobbled beaches where pinewoods met surf in jagged confluence. Dolphins leapt parallel. Silver arcs glimpsed before vanishing. At dusk they anchored near the ruins of Fellwood, where a tide-rut hollow offered concealment. Campfires were forbidden. They ate cold oatcakes and spoke in murmurs. That night Jon dreamed. A broad plain of ice stretched before him, littered with weirwood leaves crimson as blood. Daenerys walked across it barefoot, leaving prints that burst into blue flame. Drogon followed, shrinking with each step until he became a hatchling struggling to keep up. Wolves howled overhead but could not break through glass sky. Jon tried to move, yet his boots rooted to ice. He woke sweating. He found Daenerys awake too, sitting on deck, knees drawn. Without words he sat beside her. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and though fear thrummed beneath his ribs, peace settled over them like mist. On the 4th day north of Storm's End, the fleet encountered trouble. A thick sea mist rolled in mid-morning, swallowing sight beyond 3 boat lengths. Davos ordered minimal sail and constant soundings. Drogon, lost to the fog, roared somewhere distant, his voice muffled like thunder behind hills of wool. Jon tasted copper in the air. Danger. A sudden crunch jarred the sloop. Keel ground upon something. Planks groaned. Gwenna cursed. Reef. Even as she spoke, shapes slid from the fog. Hulks of tar-black wood, prows carved like snarling eels, iron-borne longships. Boarding hooks launched, biting rail. Gray shapes swarmed, axes raising. Shields! Davos bellowed, but time ran thin. Jon drew Longclaw, meeting the first raider who vaulted amidships. Steel rang dot-eye. He parried a cleaver, riposted with a cut that split chain and collarbone. Another raider followed, bearded, swinging mace. Jon ducked beneath and drove pommel into throat. Arya fought near the mast, weaving slender as willow, needle flicking between riblinks. Davos held quarterdeck with Ren, deflecting axe blows. Daenerys stood unarmed amid chaos, until a raider grabbed her arm. She snarled, twisting, heel catching his knee. He staggered. Her eyes flared, and instinct, old as Valyria, rose. She shouted a single word into fog. Drogon. The dragon's roar answered. Splitting vapor. A cyclone of heat swept the deck as Drogon descended like a comet, wings beating fog into ragged shreds. Raiders froze. Drogon's flame burst across the longship abeam, wood blackening, sails igniting. Screams lifted. The dragon swept low, tail smashing another boarding crew into the water. Jon glimpsed a spray of orange reflected in Daenerys' eyes. For an instant fear pricked. Fear she might surrender to the euphoria of burning. But she raised her arm, palm outward, voice ringing calm. No more. Drogon veered, flame cut, banking away. The remaining Ironborn, faces waxen, scrambled to cut lines, shoving oarsmen aft. Their leader, a scarred woman with rings in her ears, met Jones glare across smoke, then spat into the sea and ordered withdrawal. Longships backed oars, disappearing into mist-trailing embers. Silence returned, broken only by crackle of burning wreckage drifting. Jon surveyed the deck. 2 sailors down, Ren nursing a split scalp, Davos bleeding from arm gash. But they lived. Daenerys exhaled shakily. Jon approached, gripping her shoulders. "You stopped him," he said. She nodded, eyes wet. I felt the fire climb my throat. I swallowed it. She shuddered. It tasted like fear and freedom. He drew her into an embrace, feeling her tremble subside. Repairs delayed them 2 days. They made camp on a pebble spit under low cliffs, working from sunrise to dusk patching hull seams with pitch, splicing torn rigging. Drogon nested atop cliffs, ever watchful. Smoke from the wrecked Ironborn hull smeared the horizon, a charcoal bruise. On the second night, Arya and Daenerys sat by a low lamp, while Jon and Davos inspected caulking. Arya offered the queen a whetstone. Daenerys turned it curiously. "For your knife," Arya said. "Keep the edge honest." Daenerys smiled thinly. "I rely on larger blades. And sometimes a small blade decides fate," Arya answered, voice weighty beyond years. She studied the queen's face. "I used to list names every night, people who wronged me, rulers who thought themselves untouchable. Each name drove me. Then one day I realized the list owned me. Do you still recite it?" Arya shook her head. "No. Vengeance is a blade with no sheath. Lesson took half my life to learn." Daenerys considered, eyes reflecting lamplight. "Perhaps I am still learning." She handed back the whetstone. "Keep this. I am not ready yet." Arya inclined her head, a warrior's silent pact. They reached Maidenpool under moonless dark, sails furled, oars dipping soundless. The town's harbor fires had been doused. Rumor of dragon pursuit chilled traders. Davos guided to an abandoned salt pier. Supplies taken swiftly. Fresh water, sacks of beans, barley flour. Jon left silver coins despite protests. Ghosts of his father's honor demanded it. By dawn they slipped away. North of Maidenpool, waves softened as the coast bent into the bight. Pine-forested islands dotted horizon. Gulls ceded airspace to terns and storm petrels. Drogon enjoyed thermals, rising high enough some mornings to vanish against sun. When he returned evening, fishy fumes filled the air. Sailors stitched dried fillets from his catches. Grey Worm's pursuit, however, pressed like an unseen tide. News reached them via fisherfolk. Unsullied triremes had landed at Crackclaw Point, their commander interrogating villages, leaving heads mounted. A dark dread followed each report. Jon felt the hound at his heels. Daenerys gathered the crew one twilight, voice firm. "I will not see more innocent blood spilled buying time for me. Our path turns inland tomorrow. Drogon flies north. The rest of you sail for White Harbor under false colors." Jon shook his head. "We stay together. Grey Worm expects us to cling to Drogon," she countered. "If he finds this ship, he finds you. But a queen on Dragonback leaves wide shadow to follow. I draw that shadow east, toward the sisters. You converge west at the last river. When snow falls, we meet beneath the heart tree at Winterfell." Bender. Silence greeted the bold plan. Davos rubbed beard. "And if the commander reaches Winterfell first, then he has to take it from Lady Stark," Arya said, stifling a grin. "I almost pity him." Jon frowned. Too many splits invite disaster. Daenerys approached him, laying a hand on his cheek. "Trust me." He closed eyes. "I do. It's Grey Worm I don't trust." Daenerys widened. "Then let me face him thousands of feet in the sky while you make safe passage for those who cannot fly." He swallowed, recognizing truth. At dawn, frost silvered the rail. Under palest pink sky, Daenerys stood astride Drogon at the water's edge. Jon tightened a fresh leather harness about her waist, improvised from scrap rigging, to loop over Saddle Ridge. Their farewell tasted of salt and unspoken fears. Arya offered Daenerys a thin dagger, ivory-handled. The queen accepted with nod of thanks. Davos clasped her forearm. "Bring the North a dragon." "Not a war," he urged. "I will," she said, mounting. Drogon hissed, impatient. Jon stepped back, hand lingering on her calf. Their eyes locked, promise beyond words. With a thunderous pulse of sinew and membrane, Drogon leapt. Pebbles scattered. Wind from his wings, bold sailors. The dragon tilted, banking over pine-crowned headlands before streaming east. Sunlight shattered across his scales, and soon, only a black speck sailed the bloomed dawn. Jon watched until sight fled, heart both lighter and heavier. He turned to crew. "Set course, west. We cross the White Knife before the new moon." "Then so." Grey Worm sighted Drogon's silhouette days later, above the Sisters' archipelago. From the deck of his flagship, he brandished spear, issuing orders. Ships wheeled northeast in pursuit. Yet each time they neared island coves, the dragon vanished into cloud. Villages lit pyres, rattled pots, and cowered. But no flame fell. The Unsullied found only hoofprints inland, false trails leading into tidal swamps where boats grounded and soldiers sank waist-deep in sucking mud. Grey Worm raged, though his face still. He realized then he chased a ghost in dragon's skin. Meanwhile the sloop, Moon's Memory, flying the Hightower Hawk pennant, slipped unrattled along the shore of the neck. Arya plotted secret channels between bog and fen using crannogmen markings seldom known outside their flooded realm. Gwenna steered through reed mazes. Davos bartered smoked eels with fishermen for fresh leeches to treat wounds. Jon kept watch, thoughts straddling distant skies where Daenerys rode alone. One fog-soft night he felt a presence, an old friend. In the bow of the boat Ghost emerged from shadow, white fur glowing faint. The direwolf padded forward, gazed up at Jon, with eyes lamplit crimson. No crew saw him, perhaps none could. Ghost lowered head, touched nose to Jon's hand, then stepped onto water's surface as if it were land, vanishing into mist toward the north. Jon understood. The realm's spirits were guiding tracks, as once before against living dead. Comfort seeped. Daenerys guided Drogon over tides and timbered hills, following the arc of the sunrise. She slept little, ate dried fish, wrapped herself in fur jerkin Jon had placed in saddle pack. During long flights she reflected upon each burnt street of King's Landing, each child's face glimpsed through smoke. The wind scoured yet softened those memories, rendering them into shapes she could hold without bleeding. Sometimes she whispered Rhaegal's name to the clouds, or Viserions, letting loved shadows ride the wind with her. On the 6th day of flight she landed upon the Frostfangs, jagged peaks guarding the western edge of the north. Snowflakes danced around Drogon's nostrils. She inhaled air crisp as hammered silver. An abandoned watchpost of the Night's Watch clung to the mountainside. She explored it: stone bunk, rusted brazier, charcoal sketches of long-dead rangers upon wall. She repaired the brazier, lit a small fire. Drogon curled outside, wings mantling him from gale. In flickering warmth she opened Arya's ivory-handled dagger, studying its edge. Her reflection in the metal seemed older. She spoke aloud. Voice quaver steady. "I am Daenerys Stormborn. I break chains. I broke the world. Now I will mend what I can, stitch by stitch." Each word felt a needle-piercing fabric of fate. Jon's ship reached White Harbor under sleet. Wyman Manderley's banners drooped above wharf battlements. The harbor master, an elderly man in green wool, greeted them with suspicion until Jon lifted his cloak and revealed the direwolf of Stark. Hospitality opened, barrels of pickled herring, flagons of spiced wine. Yet news darkened welcome. Sansa's host encamped outside King's Landing, parley stalled. Queen's men, unsullied skirmishes along the Roserad. Grey Worm's navy combed eastern coasts seeking a dragon. Jon dispatched ravens to Winterfell, to the Vale, to Riverland's allies. Each missive spoke carefully: a queen seeks atonement, not throne. Provide passage, not violence. Some maesters might laugh, but seeds sometimes sprout in unlikely stone. They waited to rendezvous. Arya trekked ahead with Crannog guides. Jon and Davos rode sturdy Garrons upriver, snow thickening with every league. Nights grew longer, fire paler. Despite weariness, Jon felt a pulse of quiet anticipation, like sap ready to rise in deepest winter. Tyrion came before Sansa Stark outside King's Landing under flag of truce. Snow dusted the lion woven upon his cloak. He knelt, chain rattling, then rose, meeting her cool blue gaze. "Lady Stark," he greeted. "I come bearing neither crown nor captive, only words." Sansa motioned him to speak. "The queen is neither dead nor upon the throne," he began. "She rides exile. Your brother aids her path north seeking penance." Murmurs rippled through the northern captains. Sansa's eyes narrowed. "Penance purchased with Stark lives?" Tyrion bowed head. "I offer counsel, my lady. The realm lies broken like a wheel smashed, but pieces may yet be set into mosaic, if bloodlust relents. Now." Sansa studied him long. "Relent first, and perhaps the north will listen." She turned, cloak swirling. "We march at sunrise to remove a tyrant's army. When the dragon returns, she may find no city left to claim." Tyrion's heart sank. Wheels might yet grind bones. Grey Worm stood upon the ramparts of Dragonstone 2 days later. Storm clouds congested sky. Waves pounded black stone below. Beyond the bay, a lone ship approached under ragged sail. Scouts reported no sigil. He ordered scorpions manned. Yet as the craft neared, flame erupted above. Drogon soaring out of cloud, rider brandishing no weapon. The dragon banked, not attacking, but drawing a wide circle. Grey Worm's eyes narrowed. A snare. Daenerys guided Drogon low enough for watchers to see her face. She made no gesture of threat. She circled twice, then wheeled east, vanishing into squall. Grey Worm clenched fists. The queen played cat and mouse, teasing defense thin across tides. But he would not falter. He turned to his lieutenants. "Prepare march to Winterfell," he ordered, voice flint. "We cut the head of wolf." The air tasted of frozen metal as Jon approached Winterfell's ramparts, one dusk near year's end. Torchlight shimmered upon repaired battlements. The castle's broad face stirred memory so keen his throat closed. He glimpsed younger him still perched there dreaming of ranger's life. Davos rode beside, cloak crusted with hoarfrost. Behind, a line of haggard but determined men from White Harbor carried what supplies remained. The gates opened. Bran, pallid and tranquil, waited in his chair beneath the arch, ravens muttering overhead. Arya emerged from twilight, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. She gripped Jon's arm fierce. No words. Inside the hall, Sansa greeted him, not with ceremonial flourish but with sibling ferocity. Arms tight around his shoulders. Warmth replaced road fatigue. Yet when he spoke Daenerys' name, tension carved her features. "Winterfell will harbor her," Sansa said at last. But the North remembers. Many cannot forget what she wrought. She comes seeking to mend, Jon replied. Then we pray her mending outpaces the wounds that chase her. Bran's green sight reached beyond snowfields and war camps. That night his eyes whitened in the godswood. He gasped visions. A dragon landing upon Ice Lake rim. A spear of black obsidian glimmering. The night fort's gate unbarred. Grey worms legion trudging frost-bitten moors. When he returned to himself, he told Jon only, paths converge in storms. Daenerys and Drogon crossed the last river on the first night of the new year. Stars pricked between aurora ribbons, bathing snowdrifts in colors seldom seen south of the wall. She marveled, heart swelling not with conquest but awe. Wolves howled greetings. She felt smaller than any throne, and freer. At dawn Winterfell's towers came into view. Smoke curling from chimneys, banners snapping. Direwolf, even the dragon of Targaryen now flown beside, stitched by Sansa's orders overnight. When Drogon descended into the yard, knights stumbled back, yet no arrows loosed. Jon stood at center, hand laid on Direwolf's sigil upon his chest. Their eyes met across the swirl of snow. She dismounted, boots crunching, and walked to him. Around them Northerners watched mute. Some glared, some merely wondered. Sansa approached in sable gown, face remote. Daenerys bowed head. I come not as queen. She announced for all to hear, breath clouding. I come as a woman who has burned too much and seeks the cold to cauterize wounds. Sansa's mouth parted, surprised. She inclined head slightly. Winter offers harsh healing. We shall see if you bear it. Daenerys nodded, accepting challenge. Jon clasped her hand, guiding her into the hall. Days slid into weeks. Snow deepened, burying outer stalls. Yet within Winterfell fires glowed bright. Daenerys occupied a modest chamber once belonging to the late Lady Lyanna. She spent mornings alongside steward mapping grain stores, afternoons helping soldiers fletch arrows, evenings in library studying histories of Bran the Builder. Slowly mistrust eased. Grooms discovered the Dragon Queen mended bridles deftly. Cooks learned that she relished leek soup. Children gawked, but soon giggled, when she attempted northern tongue phrases. Outside the walls, Grey Worm's legion advanced, though winter tested them severely. Many unsullied succumbed to frostbite, supply wagons bogged in drifts. Yet still they trudged, unwavering. Scouts reported they would reach the Barrowlands within 3 fortnights. Council convened nightly. Jon, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Davos, Jon Royce of the Vale, Lord Manderley, Lady Lyanna Mormont, grown stern beyond years. Opinions clashed. Some urged raising every banner to crush the approaching host. Others feared battle would break realm again. Daenerys listened more than spoke. But one night she stood, voice clear. I will ride to meet Grey Worm alone, she declared. I began this war. Let me end it. Uproar followed. Jon slammed fist on table. He will kill you. Or he will hear me? She replied. Sansa's eyes flashed. You gamble with more than your life. If he slays you, his wrath turns here unchecked. Daenerys faced her. And if I remain? 2 armies will rend snow red while the world watches another wheel rile. I will not. Bran murmured then, voice like distant wind. A lone flame may thaw a frozen heart, but wind must blow gentle, else it snuffs the spark. Silence settled heavy. Jon met Daenerys' gaze and saw resolve immovable yet tender. He felt the old ache, fear of loss, but greater still the respect she had earned in snow-buried courtyards and smoke-filled forges. He rose. I ride with her, he said. She shook head gently. You are the bridge between North and Realm. Should I fail, your voice must stand. He gripped her forearms. I cannot. You can, she whispered. And you will. Their foreheads touched, a gesture witnessed by all. 2 days later, Daenerys mounted Drogon at dawn. Yard hushed, save for the shiver of spears in frosty racks. Jon stepped back, wearing the black cloak of Lord Commander long gone. sigil newly sewn. Sansa stood upon battlement, Arya perched by Merlon edge masked in wolf's furs. Bran watched through ravens swirling overhead. Daenerys looked once around the stone bailey, imprinting faces. Then she soared, wings stirring flurries. The dragon's roar echoed off ice-laden ramparts like a challenge to winter itself. Shadows stretched long behind them southward. That evening, she spied Grey Worm's camp. Neat ranks, fires banked low, shields stacked snow ridge. The commander stood alone at perimeter, spearhead reflecting fire. She landed 30 paces away, unarmed, cloak snapping. Unsullied turned, eyes wide, yet discipline held. Grey Worm regarded her, features carved from granite. "My queen?" he said, voice hoarse. She stepped forward, every crunch of snow loud. "I forfeited the throne the moment I burned innocence," she said. "I ask only the chance to rebuild what I broke." He remained still. "The world feared you then. It fears your mercy now more." "Perhaps," she admitted. "But fear forges only chains. You despise chains." Then there, a flicker in his gaze. Memories of slave past. She spread her arms. "Strike if you must. Let fire end with me." Her voice shook, not from cold. Grey Worm's breath plumed. Spears behind him bristled. He raised his weapon and cast it aside. Snow muffled its fall. "We followed you to free us," he said quietly. "If freedom means laying arms, unsullied obey." A hush rolled across camp like dawn breeze. Soldiers, faces scar-littered, stared in disbelief. Yet one by one they lowered spears, the soft hiss of metal in snow merging into single sigh. Daenerys closed her eyes, tears freezing on lashes. Drogon rumbled gentle approval. Grey Worm knelt. His voice trembled at last. "Forgive me for doubt, my queen." She knelt opposite, clasping his shoulders. "Forgive me for giving reason." Above them, northern lights unfurled green and violet across black vault. Unsullied lifted faces, unused to wonders. Amid that aurora, a queen without crown and a soldier without master forged a peace not in flame, but in frost-kissed promise. 3 weeks passed before the great host, unsullied now bearing no emblem save simple leather harness, marched beneath Winterfell's gate. Northerners watched warily from ramparts, yet blades remained sheathed. Bran guided Grey Worm to the Godswood, where Hearttree's red eyes shed no judgment. Only stillness. There they buried spears, wooden shafts interred into snow-dark soil, saplings of new forest perhaps. Ravens carried word south. The realm's bloodiest survivors had chosen truce. Across charred capitals and broken keeps, men and women paused, uncertain, hopeful. Inside Winterfell's hall, Jon and Daenerys stood before gathered banners. She spoke. "I have no claim now but this. Let every house that bore a scar bear also a seedling I will nurture. Not queen, not conqueror, but gardener. Let the realm bloom or wither by choice, not by fear." Silence lingered, then Manderly stepped forward, plump hands clasped. "I have taste for gardens," he said softly. Lady Mormont, fierce eyes narrowing, nodded. "Gardens with wolves watchdog." Others followed, banners dipping in a scent. One after another, a field of new sprouts pushing through snow. Outside, Drogon lay curled about the broken weirwood stump by the outer yard, breath fogging amber. Children crept close, laughing when his nostrils fluttered their hair. In their giggles sounded promise. Jon slipped his fingers through Daenerys, warmth blooming. "Spring will come," he whispered. She squeezed. "And when it does, we will plant." Far across the sea, in the shadow-shaped halls of old Valyria, cracked domes quaked as something ancient stirred. The memory of dragons returning not as scourge, but as shepherds. A wind blew through molten fissures, carrying faint scent of pine and frost. In the echo chambers of prophecy, wheels that had ground for ages began to spin anew, this time not crushing bones, but churning soil for the seeds of dragons and wolves alike. And in the vast sky above forests yet uncharted, Drogon soared, carving patterns no maester could record. his shadow sliding over rivers, thawing beneath early sun. With each beat of his colossal wings, ash fell away like old scabs, revealing the hidden green beneath. The realm drew breath, tentative, trembling, but whole, heralding not an age of fire nor of ice, but of growth, where once broken things might take root in the cooled scars of yesterday's blaze. Wah! Ha! Winter settled upon the north like a breath held too long, layers of silence packing themselves into every hollow between the keep's rough stones. Hearth smoke drifted from Winterfell's chimneys in delicate ribbons and fell straight down instead of rising, too heavy with cold to ascend. Inside the hall the fires roared day and night, but they never seemed to chase the chill from the corners. Men knitted thumbs through their belts, women wrapped shawls thrice around shoulders, and dogs preferred the stables to the yard. Only the ravens did not complain. They thrived on the stillness, sailing from turret to turret in leisurely arcs, black wings brush-stroking the gray sky. Jon Snow woke each dawn before the first watch bell, dressed by the dim glow of rushlight, and made his rounds. Rampart, Godswood, kennels, smithy, granary, then hall. There was comfort in the pattern. He told himself the rhythm helped the small folk believe that life continued in an ordinary way. But if he were honest, he needed it more than they did. Whenever he paused too long, he heard the bells of a ruined city, ringing between heartbeats. On this morning, his steps carried him toward the archway leading into the Godswood. A thin crust of frost pinged beneath his boots. The weirwood pool lay still, a black mirror where snowflakes drifted and melted on the surface. Quick sparks snuffed before they could glow. Bran sat beside the heart tree, wheels of his chair half buried in snowbank, eyes closed. Jon did not disturb him. A dozen ravens perched among the red leaves, as patient as their master. One, white-winged, black-eyed, cocked its head as Jon passed, as though weighing the worth of his silence. He found Daenerys kneeling at the water's edge. She had traded silk for wool, crimson for charcoal, but the wind still tried to lift her hair like torch flame. She dipped a bare hand through the rime skim and traced ripples that spread until they lapped against the roots. Ghost sat beside her, head on paws, untroubled by cold. She did not turn. "Did you ever name the weirwood?" she asked softly. "I don't think the old gods need names for their trees," Jon answered. "There is an island in the Jade Sea," she said, voice quiet, "where the priests carve a name into the trunk before they pray. So the tree remembers whom it shelters." He thought of the red eyes above them. "These trees remember on their own." She looked over shoulder. "I hope so. I come here every dawn to tell this one that I am sorry." He knelt beside her. "For what you've done, or for what you fear you still might do." "Both." Her hand slid from the surface, droplets beating into tiny crystals on her skin. "You heard the report last night. Targaryen loyalists taking to the King's Road, chanting Dracarys, burning farmsteads for refusing them bread. They do it in my name." Her shoulders tightened. "How do I make them understand I never asked for more fire?" Jon watched breath curl from his lips. "Words won't reach men who already chose flames. Action might. We send riders south with wagons of grain. Let the small folk see whose banner truly feeds them." "Gun?" she considered. "Grain is light as a feather in winter, and twice as precious." Then, almost shyly, "Thank you." Ghost rose, shook frost from his fur, trotted off. Jon reached to warm Daenerys' fingers between both of his. The cold between them was smaller than yesterday, and he wondered if any wound truly sealed in one winter, or if healing was simply learning to breathe around the ache. By midday, the courtyard rang with hammer and anvil. The old smith Torek had taught himself to shape unsullied spears into shovel heads, and the rasping clang echoed down the archways. Around a long table near the kennels, Davos, Arya, Lyanna Mormont, and Grey Worm bent over a parchment map, weighed by 4 black river stones. "This fork floods every thaw," Davos was saying, tapping a rivulet inked in blue. "Drive piling here, and here, keep the King's Road above water, and carts roll north straight through muddy seasons." Lyanna Mormont scowled in that particular 10-year-old way that could sour beer. "And who mind the pilings when the rush ice breaks?" she demanded. "Fish don't mend timber." The unsullied Grey Worm answered in even tones. "We build, we guard." She folded arms. "If you plant them outside our villages, fine. But your soldiers will live inside our walls as guests, not gaolers." Grey Worm inclined head. "Unsullied obey rules of host. We ask only roof, bread, and chance to work." He jabbed the parchment again. "You fear spears. We bring shovels." That ended discussion. Arya flipped a dagger end over end, silent until Lyanna stalked away. "She'll come around. Northman trusts slow." She eyed Grey Worm. Better than never trusting at all. He showed no expression, yet Jon noticed a softening around the eyes. Once, mercy from him would have seemed impossible. Now it was simply a new line carved on an old shield. 3 mornings later, ravens arrived thick as hail from the south. One bore Sansa's seal, stamped in white beeswax. Jon cracked it open, eyes scanning quickly, then read aloud in the council chamber while lamplight flickered. "The host at King's Landing has dispersed. Lords of the Reach and Vale returned home to harvest what seed remains. Tyrion released on bond of good faith. He accepted exile within the walls to act as penitent steward. The city charred but living. I will hold councils each 7th day until crops resprout. Wheels are stones, brother. We must roll them uphill together." Davos chuckled. "That girl's already queen in all but coronet." Arya smirked. She never liked jewelry anyway. Daenerys folded parchment, exhaled relief. No more swords rattling in the south, at least until spring. She turned to Jon. "I should go to her. Kneel before the lords I wronged. Bend my head until they tire of seeing it. Then see. You will." Jon agreed gently. "When the North no longer needs you here." The hall had become a beehive of needs. Spring chores started months before frost broke. Plotting seed, sharpening plow, setting lines for fishing huts on shivering sea. Much of the work fell to commanders who once swung blades. The Unsullied drilled by dawn's gray light, then laid picks to frozen ground, cutting new drainage ditches on the surrounding fields, so meltwater would not rot seedlings. 3 Dothraki riders, remnants of a horde once thunderous, taught orphans to lash together simple sledges pulled by small shaggy ponies they had captured on the moor. At night, the same riders listened to old Nan's stories and gasped at tales of giants. Giants' bones, it turned out, surfaced every thaw in the low meadows east of the castle. Bran saw this in his dreams and dispatched teams to retrieve them. Some were smaller than a man's arm, some longer than a wagon pole. Grey Worm had them stacked beneath tarpaulins. When Jon asked why, Bran only said, "Every kingdom rests on bones. Best we know which and where." Jon suspected more but pressed no further. Across the sea of trees beyond Wintertown lived Halder the Cooper, a stooped man with one ear frost-bitten off the winter after the Red Wedding. He had built casks for ale and pitch most his life. In second moon of the new year, he discovered 2 men skulking near his shed. Their lanterns shuddered, their boots new and gilded. He offered them beer. They drew short swords and demanded his mule. Halder complied but left the froth to go flat. Next dawn he trudged the icy mile to Winterfell, complained to whomever would listen. Arya listened. She left that afternoon with 2 silent Unsullied, arrived at Halder's shed near dusk. Footprints tracked east toward the Wolf's Wood. They followed until moonrise and found the thieves setting snares for rabbits, mule tethered to a broken elm. Arya thought them fools, children hardly older than Bran had been at his fall. But Unsullied shackled them nonetheless. Brought into Winterfell's hall, they named themselves Farland Flowers and Darren of Bitterbridge. Sons of lesser reachlords who had fled the wreckage of kings, landing fearing retribution from northern hosts. "We never burned a thing," Farland insisted, quivering before Grey Worm's impassive stare. He knelt to Jon. "We only wanted safe passage north. Heard a dragon queen gives bread to farmers." Jon steepled fingers. "You stole from one." Daenerys descended from the dais. Grey Worm drew back. She stepped close, studying their tear-marked faces. Where are your families? Dead. Farland whispered. Plague in Tumbleton. Then your loyalty? None, my lady. Only hunger. She gestured. The Unsullied removed their fetters. Hunger has no banner to betray. You will return the mule, mend fences you broke, and work Halder's press until he calls you apprentices. Farland gaped. Darren managed to nod. They wept again. This time not from fear. Halder grumbled but took them in. The casks that winter were tighter staved than any he'd ever made. Word of the judgment spread on the wind faster than ravens. The Queen of Fire had spared thieves, paid them in wood shavings instead of burnings. The story grew, embroidered with flourishes. A dragon curled beside the cooper's hearth. Unsullied stirring solder for hoops. By thaw, wanderers drifted north, seeking the same leniency. Some carried charcoal sketches of her face. Others bore only fevered songs. All carried hunger. Tyrion Lannister wrote once a fortnight, and always the same way. Half jest, half self-scourging. His letters were full of mortar counts, latrine repairs, minor scandals. The cobblers quarreled with candlemakers about sewage trench rights. I intervened by reminding both that neither candles nor boots fare well floating in shit. Yet between lines Jon sensed a different ledger, columns tallying guilt and patience. In the 6th epistle, Tyrion confessed he had taken to sleeping on the stone floor of the old Tower of the Hand. Rather than accept plush bedding, I find discomfort keeps my wits sharpened and my remorse honest. Also, fleas respect no titles, so we share the ceasefire. He ended. Tell the Queen I am building a dovecote in the Ashen Quarter. Perhaps someday a bird might carry forgiveness back along the same flight. Daenerys read the line thrice, tears gathering but never falling. She folded the letter into her bodice and spent the rest of the day supervising cook fires for a soup line outside Wintertown. Snow melted at last into trickle, then streams, then brown roaring rivers that ate the ice from beneath. Birch catkins dangled, and children waded to gather them, squealing at cold. In the fields north of the King's Road, the first green spears of winter wheat pierced sludge. The air smelled of rot and promise. It was planting time. Jon rode the length of the outer farms with Grey Worm and Lyanna Mormont. They counted shoulders willing to bear seed baskets. 263. Not enough but more than feared. On the highest ridge they dismounted. Below, hundreds of Unsullied marched in 4 neat columns, carrying wooden poles and leather sacks. At a barked command, they broke ranks, spread across the ridges, and began to stab poles into soil at measured intervals, marking rows for plow teams that would follow. From distance, it looked like dark needles sewing new cloth onto earth. Lyanna watched, fierce pride disguised behind a scowl. If they plant as well as they fought, we'll eat like kings. She allowed. Better, Jon said. Kings seldom eat honest grain. Grey Worm regarded the horizon. Unsullied never farmed. We sowed salt on burning skin. Field is quieter. Jon nodded, feeling an odd ache, gratitude that still stung. When the poles were set, the Unsullied gathered near a mound where an ancient barrow cracked and tilted. They planted their spears into the vines circling the stones. Blade down, hafts up, a forest of vicious blossoms turned harmless. Then they walked away, leaving weapons to rust into the mound. Jon swore the grass breathed easier. That night, a gale rolled in from the shivering sea, snapping banners to tatters. Daenerys climbed the battlements to watch lightning crawl over distant clouds. Drogon, grown restless by the smell of thaw, stomped along the parapet until the wall trembled. He spread wings thrice, testing wind. Guards scrambled to steady torches. Jon arrived breathless, hair plastered to his forehead, just as the dragon beat upward, talons scraping stone and vaulted into the sky. A gust shoved them both against Merlon's. Jon cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted into the roar. "Where is he going?" "East," Daenerys cried back. Fear and wonder wrestled in her eyes. "He smells something." 3 lightning forks flashed. Drogon's silhouette jittered against them. Huge, wild. Then the clouds swallowed him whole. Thunder rolled over Winterfell like drums made of mountains. Daenerys gripped Joan's cloak. "I feel it too," she said. "A call." "What kind of call?" She opened and closed her hands, as though squeezing invisible sand. "Not blood. Not fire. Something older than either." She pressed fists to chest. "If I follow." He grasped her shoulders. "Not tonight. You can't ride storm blind. I've flown worse." But she relented, leaning into him. Together, they watched sheets of rain erase the stars. Drogon did not return before dawn. Nor did he return the next day, or the next. Tracks of worried speculation etched the castle courtyards. Some whispered he had sensed new hatchlings in the smoking wastes of old Valyria. Others feared he hunted krakens off the broken arm. Daenerys paced the walls until her boots wore raw at the heel. Then, on the seventh evening, ravens spiraled above the towers. Not brands, but wild ones glowing white beneath the moon. They screamed and fled west. Moments later, a roar boomed across the weirwood like a rolling forge, and Drogon descended out of darkness, talons clutching something glowing faintly white. He alighted in the Godswood clearing, boughs breaking under his wings. Jon arrived first, sword slapping against thigh. The dragon lowered his head and carefully dropped a stone. No, an egg, large as a man's torso. Chalky white, veins of pale blue threading its shell. Snow hissed and steamed around it. Daenerys pushed between unsullied, face pale. She knelt, laid palm against the shell. It pulsed with warmth, not fire, rather the gentle warmth of late spring sunlight. Bran rolled closer, eyes clouding. "The wind spoke in High Valyrian," he said. "It said, 'The wheel is wood now. Wood may sprout.'" "Then he." Jon lifted brows. "A dragon egg inside winter?" Bran shook head slightly. "Not dragon. Something else." Daenerys traced a blue vein up the curve. Beneath, a faint responding glow traveled like a heartbeat. "It lives." She glanced at Drogon. He hummed deep in his throat, content. He found it beyond the mountains of the moon, in ice caves. She knew this without asking. The image blossomed in her mind along Drogon's memory. A cavern pulsing azure, stalactites caressing the shell. A whisper older than Valyria. "What grows from it?" Jon asked. She answered, voice wavering. "Hope, I pray." She rose. "We must keep it warm, yet not too warm. Alive, yet not woken before time." She directed Unsullied to clear a stable stall, gather clean straw, build a cradle of pine. Drogon followed, massive head nudging her shoulder like an ox. Word of the egg spread beyond Wintertown before dawn. Some cheered, drunk on tales. Others crossed themselves and locked doors. Songs sprouted like mushrooms. The frost wyvern's bride. The egg of dawn. Snowflame. Minstrels strummed them outside taverns and were paid in turnips when coin ran short. Summer arrived shyly, late but bright, spilling gold across wheat heads grown waist-high. The egg remained in its pine cradle inside the granary loft, guarded day and night. Bran visited often, humming in a language only ravens seemed to know. He sometimes pressed both hands to the shell and smiled faintly as if hearing lullabies. One afternoon, Arya climbed the ladder to find him there. "What lurks inside?" she asked, leaning elbows on her knees. "Not lurks," Bran corrected. "Dreams." He brushed dust from the shell. "Dreams of sky and river and roots." "Roots?" She frowned. "Sounds like a tree. Or a bridge between trees," he said. "Remember the stories of the children. How they sang stone to grow into doorways. Not all seeds sprout branches upward. Some sprout memories." Arya rubbed the smooth shell. Images flickered in her mind, icy tunnels echoing with ancient voices, leaves of copper falling in slow spirals, wolves dancing flames into patterns. She jerked away, swallowing. Stranger than a faceless man's sleep. She muttered. Bran only smiled. Serene. While Bran communed with egg dreams, Daenerys and Jon traveled south to the Neck, escorted by 40 Unsullied and a dozen Northmen scouts. They visited every hamlet along the Green Fork, handing out small leather scrips of seed oats, stamped with a black direwolf over a silver dragon. Food tokens, redeemable at Wintertown Granary once harvest ended. Mark of the Spring, folk called them. Jon disliked the word mark. Daenerys re-inked stamps herself, refusing to let her name appear. At Greywater Watch, they met Howland Reed, gray-bearded, eyes keen as reeds in wind. He welcomed them on floating platform, fed them eel pie, spoke softly of the day he knelt beside Lyanna Stark's birthing bed beneath the Tower of Joy. Daenerys listened, tears shining when he described Lyanna's last words. "Promise me." Jon grasped Daenerys' hand beneath table, and felt a chain break ghostly around his chest. Howland's gift was simple. A rolled bark scroll containing runes of the children describing the forging of ice seedlings, a union of flame and frost that knitted cracks in the land. Daenerys took it, mind racing. Jon saw plans ignite. Autumn fires blazed across forests. An envoy from White Harbor arrived, Sir Maladon Manderley, bearing fresh-packed herring and tidings. Pirates from the Iron Islands had begun raiding eastern bays, emboldened by rumor of a leader styling himself King of Salt and Smoke. Jon gathered counsel. Grey Worm offered to sail at once with 300 unsullied archers. Davos advised caution. Salt folk die many times before sword touches water. Better we bait them than chase. Daenerys proposed they invite the Pirate King to parley at Shield Islands. A meeting of tides, she called it. Let them glimpse the egg, let them weigh its meaning. Jon raised an eyebrow. You think a Salt King fears eggs? He might respect birth more than death, she answered. The hall hummed uneasy wonder. Preparations dragged into early frost. Longships were refitted at White Harbor. A silver wolf's head figurehead was carved for the lead vessel, and a stylized dragon tail for the stern. Sailcloth dyed gray and crimson. Daenerys insisted on naming the ship Haven, not Harrier. We carry walls made of words, she said. Let the name remind us. But before the fleet launched, another raven arrived, from Tyrion. Lords gathering in Old Town whisper of a claimant from beyond sea. They call him Young Griff, and swear his eyes are darker than yours, but claim the same blood. If baited, they might follow him the way moths follow the moon. A different wheel perhaps, but no less crushing. I advise planting fields with truth before lies root. Also, the dovecote collapsed. I am covered in feathers and regret. That night, Daenerys paced the solar. Clenched. Jon watched flames dance in the hearth. Another Targaryen? He asked. Another hammer. She flung scroll onto table. Do I forge a realm only for every spark of my house to ignite new fires? She pressed fingers to temples. Jon approached. Aegon or bastard. He cannot burn a realm already growing green. If we keep soil tended, thrones become chairs, nothing more. How? She demanded. He drew her arms down, folding them around him. By showing we have no throne ourselves, he murmured. She rested head on his chest. If I kneel before every lord and bastard prince, will they stop sharpening swords? No, he said, but they might set them aside to plant. He stroked her hair. And if they don't, Winterfell stands ready. She allowed the moment to stretch, then sighed. We must travel farther than Shield Islands. We must go to Old Town, stand before the High Tower, speak where maesters write their histories. Jon tensed. Old Town meant maesters who still distrusted magic, septons preaching dragons as harbingers of doom, but fear disguised as wisdom never withstood plain sight. Then we go. I alone, she corrected. If I walk into their citadel with a wolf at my flank, the old men will think I come to tear down their shelves. He opened mouth to argue but glimpsed steel in her gaze. He nodded reluctantly. One condition. Grey Worm accompanies. She smiled, grateful. 2 swords then, one of shadow, one of sun. Later that night, he found her reading Howland Reed's bark scroll again. She traced the runes as if in prayer. He stood at the door watching until she beckoned. She pointed to a symbol shaped like two circles, intertwined. "They call it the germ of dawn," she said. "It means the first moment a seed feels soil." She kissed the bark gently. "We will carry this to Old Town. Let them read a language older than their citadel." Drogon refused to be left behind. When Haven cast off from White Harbor under pale sun, the dragon took wing, circling high above the masts, trailing the ship like a storm cloud with a mind. Sailors crossed themselves when his shadow fell. Some wept in terror, some in raw awe. But he did not scorch a rope or a plank. He fished, diving occasionally to snatch a whale calf, sharing meat with a pod of orcas he herded for sport. The ocean became his pasture. The voyage southward traced the broken coast where the neck widened into salt marsh, then collapsed into ragged cliffs. Gulls swarmed the rigging like white blossoms. Nights, Daenerys stood at the prow, cloak snapping, eyes fixed on the horizon as though reading constellations invisible to the rest. Grey Worm seldom spoke, but kept watch with her, until dawn. The Unsullied accepted the heave of deck better than some seasoned sailors. They stood rooted even in storms, earning grudging respect from the White Harbor oarsmen. On the 12th day, they sighted the towering beacon of the High Tower, its glass candle flaring green-white. Drogon banked low, roaring challenge. Bells rang frantic across the city. The lighthouse beacon flickered. Haven dropped anchor outside reach of scorpions. Daenerys disembarked in a small boat with Grey Worm and 2 Maester emissaries greeting them under flags of truce. On shore, cobblestones trembled from the weight of watchers pressed along sea walls. Some tossed rose petals, others threw stones. Most simply stared mute at the woman who stepped from legend into their dust. Daenerys wore plain grey wool, hair tied in single braid, Howland's bark scroll tucked beneath arm. Grey Worm wore unsullied blue leathers, spear unshod. They walked through parted crowds toward the citadel. Inside, archmaesters gathered in a vaulted chamber smelling of dust and ink. The seneschal, a man named Egbert, with beard forked into 2 braids, gestured stiffly to a pulpit. Daenerys ascended. She unrolled the scroll onto a lectern. Runes glimmered faint green beneath stained glass light. She spoke without flourish. Ages before Valyria, before Old Town, the children sang seeds into ice and flame. They sought balance, not dominion. Dragons of fire awakened to defend their songs, yet dragons of frost slumbered to cool their excesses. Both forgot harmony in time and became hunger. I stand before you as memory and warning. My fire burned a city, yet from that same ash fields rise green. Here is the rune for Germ of Dawn. Read it. Teach it. Plant it. Besimtar. She stepped back. Egbert cleared throat. We appreciate your lore, your grace. But history must be verified. Grey Worm laid spear across scroll, eyes hard. We verify with blood spilled. We now verify with life grown. Another archmaester, old, woman, eyes kinder, leaned forward. The egg you guard. May we see it? Someday, Daenerys answered. When your quills write less about crowns and more about plowshares. She descended. The archmaesters murmured like disturbed bees. Yet Egbert did not order her seized. No guards advanced. In that hesitation, hope rooted. Outside, a company of Tyrell men in half-restored colors waited, led by a tall youth wearing a circlet of wrought copper. Willis Tyrell, he introduced, bowing stiffly. Old injury leaving one leg stiff. My people hunger for bread more than justice. You bring seed, knowledge. She corrected, but smiled. Same to a farmer, he said. He escorted her to a market square, where ashes of the High Septon's great plaza had been cleared. There stood stalls of scorched timber now reborn as planter boxes. Children pressed seeds into ash-rich soil. We call it the Phoenix Garden, Willis said. Ash feeds root if tended. Daenerys felt tears bite wind-burned cheeks. She knelt among children, guided a boy's small hand to cover seed with soil, whispering, "Germ of dawn." The boy repeated, laughing. Above, Drogon circled once, then glided east toward open sea. No fire followed. While Daenerys seeded mines in Old Town, Jon guided Winterfell through its first harvest since the fall. The wheat fields rippled golden, where once snow had dwarfed men. Ghost lay among sheaves, nose twitching at mice. Northmen and Unsullied labored side by side, scythes flashing. Songs rose. Some in Valyrian, some in the old tongue, some wordless. The granaries filled. One crisp twilight, Bran summoned Jon and Arya to Godswood. The egg lay between them. Shell no longer pure white but swirled with veins of green and silver. Bran placed a hand lightly upon it. It hummed like wind through harp strings. "It wakes tonight," Bran said. Awake to what? Jon wanted to ask, but voice died under the weirwood's gaze. They waited, as moon climbed. When its light struck the shell, small cracks spider-webbed outward, emitting soft pearlescent glow. The air smelled of cedar and fresh snowmelt. Ghost whined, ears back. Arya's dagger twitched in her grip, but she held still. With a faint chime, the shell parted in 4 petals. Within curled no dragon but a creature, the size of a fox, slick with frost-flecked membrane. It unfolded, long sinuous body sheathed in translucent scales that shimmered between white and pale moss. Feather-like frills fringed its jaw. 4 legs ended in talons as delicate as quills. 2 wings, narrow and veined like willow leaves, pressed wetly against sides. Its eyes opened, irises crystalline blue shot with green, pupils vertical like cats. It regarded Bran first, tilting head. Bran smiled. "Welcome, little memory." He brushed its muzzle. Frost traced his fingertips but did not burn. Jon knelt, all rendering words small. "What is it?" Bran stroked its spine. The children called them Sky Draka in Old Tongue. Shade dragons. Not of flame but of breath and sap. They once guided springs, thawed ice rivers gently so floods would not scour forests. Last one hatched when Valyria sank. The creature shook membrane, stood, spread wings. In the motion, ice crystals fell tinkling, forming frost letters on the ground, in shapes reminiscent of runes. Arya exhaled a quick laugh. "It writes," Bran translated silently. "It says hunger, thirst, sky." Jon found a bowl of melted snow from earlier prayers. The shade dragon dipped muzzle, sipping. Steam rose where tongue touched water. Then it tottered to the pool and bent to its reflection. Ghost crept forward, sniffed. The little dragon hissed softly. Ghost bowed head, tail wagging slow. What will it feed on? Arya wondered. Light, Bran said. And stories. Jon frowned. Stories? Bran's eyes flickered white briefly. Every memory we speak near it, it will carry into roots and rivers. It is living witness. He smoothed its neck. If we lie, it will know. So best not lie, Arya said with crooked grin. They named the creature Verdant, though the children called it Frostpetal. It grew fast. Within weeks length doubled, wings stronger. It spent hours coiled in the tower library listening to maesters recite histories, occasionally releasing puffs of cool mist when pages turned. Gardeners reported vegetables twice usual size where it slept at midday. Some feared it. A septon traveling from the Trident called it an abomination that mocked the Seven's dominion over seasons. He preached at the gates until Verdant swooped overhead trailing glitter that made his beard bloom with tiny white flowers. He fled shrieking about witchcraft. Children laughed for a week. Daenerys returned by the first snows. Heaven's decks stacked with crates labeled in Archmaester script. Treatises on crop rotation, seaweed fertilizer, and something called mirror glass irrigation. She also brought 10 wagons of barley seed gifted by Lord Willis, plus a new hull design allowing shallower draft to navigate northern rivers. Old town rumors of young Griff remained, but interest had waned. Warlords found harvest more profitable than banners. In the courtyard she disembarked and saw Verdant perched atop the gatehouse, gilded by dusk, wings glowing lavender. Tears sprang. She hurried up the steps, John by her side, reaching the parapet as Verdant lit on the stone gently, snout nudging her palm. Frost ribboned her fingers. She laughed, breath smoky. "Beautiful," she whispered. Drogon landed moments later and bowed his head to the smaller creature. Verdant fluttered across his snout and curled between his horns. Fire and frost met without hiss. That night feast tables groaned under pheasant, root stew, and the first carrots of new garden. Daenerys stood to toast, voice carrying over joyful din. "We cannot erase ashes, but we can choose what grows in them. Let this hall be soil for every hand willing to dig." She lifted cup. Hundreds followed. The sound echoed into rafters where ravens perched. Silent, watchful. Peace did not mean stillness. Challenge came in forms subtler than blades. In early thaw, a sickness spread through Wintertown. A rash of silver blisters that wept clear fluid, leaving victims feverish but lucid. Maesters puzzled. Leeches failed. Verdant visited one sick house, perched on rafter, fanned wings over sleepers while humming tone like wind through threads. By dawn the blisters had crusted, and new red skin formed below. The dragonling repeated ritual in every hut, and illness vanished within days. Word traveled faster than any plague. The north harbored a healing shadow. Superstition flared. Some worshipped Verdant as a god. Others demanded it be caged, lest its blessing turn to curse. Jon decreed no idol crowns, no chains. Daenerys spoke on ramparts. "It is no god, no weapon, but a mirror. If we hate, it will reflect fear. If we care, it will reflect bloom." Folk listened. Few preached after that. In the 6th year after King's Landing's fall, the first new Assembly of Realms convened under the Heart Tree. Delegates from every major house gathered, Sansa representing the Crown Lands as elected protector. Gendry of Storm's End, Willas of Highgarden, Edmure Tully restored to River Run, Lady Asha Greyjoy, newly wed to trade not raid, bearing driftwood, crown broken into planks to symbolize ends of reaving. From Dorne came Princess Arianne, sunfire in her eyes, wearing a cloak embroidered with both salt and sand snakes. Even Tyrion arrived, thinner, hair turned silver at the temples, carrying ledgers and a single quill. No throne awaited them, only a circle of carved stools. Direwolf sigil burned into each seat. Bran moderated, though he seldom spoke. Ravens perched above him like black arguments. Jon stood behind Daenerys. Arya paced behind Sansa. Smiling like a cat, they debated grain tariffs, canal dredging, joint patrols on Sunset Sea. Voices rose and cooled. At moonrise, Tyrion proposed codifying a yearly mood of equal votes. Lady Asha balked. Fishmongers want sail south to ask permission to fish, but compromised when promised rights to build dry docks in 3 river ports. When the question of titles arose, Willis suggested Daenerys resume styling as queen to sign charters. She declined. "I am planter, not wearer of crowns." Instead, she asked for a new title, Warden of Seeds. The assembly laughed, until they realized she was serious. They voted unanimous. She penned charter with that signature, smiling. The moot concluded with Verdant flitting overhead, showering harmless frost flakes that melted into the grass, leaving dew shaped like runes only children understood. They chased each other across clearing, reading the shapes aloud. Germ of dawn. Sprout of dusk, river never ends. One bitter night 2 riders arrived at Winterfell bearing tattered gold-black banners of King's Landing. They sought audience with Jon and Daenerys. Their tale chilled even seasoned guards. Rumor claimed Cersei Lannister's youngest nephew, Tyrek, long thought dead, had emerged in the Westerlands backed by sellswords purchased from Myr. He promised to restore true lion rule, and hung flayed rats from gatehouses as warning to spiders, that is, to Tyrion spies. He marched east burning villages, capturing lords still weary from wars. Jon convened council. Gendry volunteered Stormland spears. Asha offered longships. But Daenerys studied the map and shook her head. "Not swords first," she said. "Not again." She looked to Verdant curled around Bran's chair. "Memories will go." 5 days later a procession set out. Bran in a sled drawn by 2 shaggy oxen. Verdant perched above him, ravens filling sky like herald banners. Daenerys rode Drogon yet forbade flame. She flew above the road, scattering frost petals. Jon led ground escort, composed of Northmen, unsullied. And at Tyrion's insistence, a modest troop of King's Landing peacekeepers, wearing no sigil but a white sash. They marched directly into the Westerland's heartland. Villagers watched awestruck as a dragon shed snow instead of fire. Verdant's presence turned drought-brown fields pale green in half a day. The sellsword companies, superstitious men, balked, mumbling that ice spirits cursed them. Tyrek, undeterred, attempted ambush near Ashmark. Bran's ravens spotted movement. Verdant wrote frost words on Jon's cloak. "Trap ahead." Jon diverted main host, leaving only unsullied van. When Tyrek's cavalry charged, they found themselves mired in ankle-deep flowers. Verdant's earlier pass had thawed ground and sprouted thousands of blossoms that tangled reins. Horses spooked. Ranks broke. No blood spilled. Tyrek fled. Asha's scouts captured him 2 nights later, hiding in a granary. He was gaunt, eyes haunted by stories he'd heard from campfires about a frost dragon carrying dead dreams in its wings. Jon met him in a ruined chapel. Tyrek shook, expecting execution. Instead, Daenerys offered bread. He sobbed and swore fealty to the moot. They bound him by charter to rebuild the villages he burned with coin from Lannisport vaults he inherited. The sellswords melted away. Years passed like pages turned by wind. Harvests doubled. Crime waned. Songs flourished. Verdant grew length of a small horse, though still light as snowfall. Children rode him under supervision, laughter trailing. Drogon flew less, content to watch fields from crags. Grey Worm aged gracefully, teaching drills with staves to village youths, who saw his scarred cheek as badge of service. Davos retired to White Harbor, captaining a single ferry that carried grain downriver, faster than any lord's galley. Arya came and went like seasons. Sometimes she vanished for months, returning with spices from Asshai or maps of archipelagos no maester had charted. She never explained how she obtained them. She and Gendry married quietly one spring equinox beneath apple blossoms. The feast after lasted 3 days and ended only when Verdant doused torches with cool mist, as though the world needed sleep. Sansa visited each summer, her council traveling in wagons painted with the sigils of every house that had once warred. She called it the Rolling Crown, a joke none missed. When Bran finally laid his carved staff aside, frail body easing into the cradle of roots at the heart tree, Sansa wept but did not wail. Bran's final words to her were, "Remember, snow is only sleeping water." Tyrion died an old man in King's Landing, quill in hand, ledger unfinished. His last act was to pen one sentence: "Balance is a table set for many and owned by none." Ravens carried that page north. Jon nailed it above the granary door. One dawn Jon walked through newly sprouted barley, dew-wetting trousers, until he reached a small stone rise where Daenerys sat, cloak drawn. Verdant circled overhead chasing bees. She glanced back, smiling lines at eyes. "I dreamed of the bells again," she confessed. And they were ringing not warning but welcome. She laid hand on earth. I woke and realized it was true. For once their sound did not break my heart. Jon sat, pulling her against him. They listened to wind, riffle barley heads. "Do you regret leaving the crown?" She thought long. "I missed the moment before I took it, when I still believed a single seat could solve the world." Her fingers interlaced with his. "But I would not trade this field for 10 iron thrones." He kissed her hair. Far in the distance, the heart tree rose. Crimson leaves whispering secrets to a sky no longer scorched. Drogon sprawled below like a black hill, children painting rune shapes on his scales with chalk. Verdant swooped low. trailing frost that melted instantly, leaving droplets sparkling. He alighted on Jon's shoulder, chirruped, then pressed snout to Daenerys' cheek. She laughed, breath white in morning sun. "What story today?" she asked. The dragonling's wings flickered letters in the air. A dance of glimmering runes. Jon read them slowly. All things move, nothing is lost. The wheel once ground, now turns to frost. Seed becomes shoot, shoot bends to grain. Share the harvest, break the chain. Daenerys whispered the words, each syllable a prayer. Jon wrapped arms about her and the small dragon, feeling the earth breathe beneath them. On that wind-swept knoll, the lingering ghosts of war receded. The north and all the realms beyond settled into a new age, neither of fire nor of ice, but of tender equilibrium. Fragile as the first bud, yet persistent as root beneath stone. Every dawn carried echoes of the old world, but each dusk sowed promise for the next. And so the stories verdant carried into the soil grew tall as oaks, their branches laden with fruit of memory and mercy. Travelers walking the King's Road decades hence would pause beneath those canopies, feeling a hush descend, sensing the weight of a silence filled not with fear, but with listening. In that hush they would hear, if they opened their hearts, the murmur of a frost dragon's wings, the laughter of a queen without a crown, and the steady heartbeat of a realm that at last had learned to grow from its own ashes rather than burn anew. Thus the north endured, the wheel stayed still, and the seeds of peace, planted by hands once trembling with rage, rose each year with the thaw. Quiet proof that even the fiercest fire and the deepest snow could cradle life when guided by those brave enough to learn, to forgive, and to begin again.